So welcome to the next installment of our webinar series here at MTDA. Today we're going to be talking about FlexCAP and IPC courses to kind of accommodate students with unique needs. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm Susan Quinn. I'm the Distance Learning Ambassador here at MTDA. Pictured on this slide also is Robin Nuttall. She's our Distance Learning Program Director, and she's what keeps distance learning moving so smoothly in the background, but she's just not here with us today. So I'll just start with FlexCAP. FlexCAP stands for Flexible Credit Alternative Program. And for a long time, people kind of thought of FlexCAP only as credit recovery, but we've kind of morphed that into really an option for students who just need flexible credit earning. So we'll talk a little bit about FlexCAP. So the FlexCAP courses are designed to be just that, flexible. They're open entry and exit, meaning that you don't have to wait till the end of a semester or wait till the beginning of a semester to start a student. They're proficiency based, so that's really ideal for students who are recovering credit or those who wish to accelerate more quickly. And we'll look at a couple of use cases in just a moment. Excuse me. Like I said, it's really for any student who needs to earn credit in a more flexible way. And I'll talk a little bit about like the proficiency-based part of it in a moment. So the FlexCAP student profile it just starts with a student who can and will attend school regularly. So, all of us in schools know that there are some really special situations also where a student isn't able to attend school regularly for whatever reason, but FlexCAP has to be done at school because all of the assessments are proctored by an adult at the school. So we always say that it's for students who are motivated to finish. I have had questions before about, what's the completion profile or what's the completion rate for FlexCAP courses? And my answer is always, it's very high if you place a student correctly. So the student has to be motivated to finish. If they're kind of dragging their feet and just sort of refusing to work, this also won't be successful for the student. So the student has to have at least one class period a day to work on the course, and that has to be supervised by a local support adult. One thing that I really recommend is that it's not a student just kind of plop down in the library with all this action around them and the librarian can occasionally proctor a test. It works much better in something like a study hall situation where things are a little bit more focused and quiet. And the adult can pay a little closer attention to the student as they work. So a student who really needs a linear course design is really a good person for this course because it is very linear. So every module starts with a proficiency exam, and if they score high enough, they skip the lessons and they go straight to the post-assessment. If they don't score high enough on the proficiency exam at the beginning, then they go through each lesson and they have lesson quizzes and some assignments that teachers grade, etc. So, but it does definitely move from top to bottom, and it's not set up so that everything is open at once. So a student really doesn't have the opportunity to jump around. So a couple example student scenarios. So the student who has failed a course, again, we used to have what we called credit recovery, and a lot of people still look at FlexCAP as primarily credit recovery, and that is one student who might benefit from FlexCAP courses. But also, how about the early grad? You've got a student who comes back to school as a senior and all of a sudden wants to graduate early and just needs to get some things under their belt so they have enough credits to graduate in January. So it allows, especially for a high achieving student, it can allow them to move pretty quickly because it's proficiency based. And if you have a student who has some strong skills in whatever subject area they need to earn the credit in, it can move pretty quickly. Or the advanced student who wants to move through some core courses more quickly and focus their energy on in-person advanced options at your school, or more dual credit options, for instance. Another use case is like a transfer student who's missing a graduation requirement that wasn't required of them at their previous school. But again, maybe they're a senior and they've just got to get enough credits to walk across the stage at the end. So those are some just basic example student scenarios. There are, of course, lots more because every case is unique, of course. The FlexCAP courses that we offer are really the basic graduation requirements. So all of the math courses up through Algebra 2, all four English courses, history courses or social studies courses that are typical graduation requirements. And then for science, we have earth science, biology, and we put health into that science category. But again, graduation requirement that some students may need to, again, recover credit or accelerate through. Some things to consider with a FlexCAP student. The first one just really is the student motivated to earn the credit? So again, going back to the question that people have asked me, what's the completion rate for FlexCAP? It's very high if you choose the right student for this program, and that student has to be motivated to earn the credit. So it's very helpful for the student to have, of course, a dedicated device and earbuds. The student has to have an assigned local support person. So that person, it's best if that person has an idea of what's going on in class, and our observer role in Canvas allows that person to get inside the course. They can see if the student has turned things in, like how much time they've spent on things, etc. So really having a local support person who can, focus on that student and really track progress is super important. And then does the student have at least one period a day with that local support person to work on the class? So again, these courses can't just be done at home with the student. The parent is not invited to proctor tests. That has to be done by someone who works for the school at school. So how it works, the first ever FlexCAP course, before that, the student has to take an orientation short course. That course is a free course. It takes the student maybe 2 to 4 hours to complete it. Once it's completed, then the site facilitator can enroll the student in the appropriate FlexCAP course. So if you try to enroll a student in a FlexCAP course before they've taken that orientation, you'll get a message that just says prerequisite isn't met. So just keep that in mind that they have to do that first. I have had schools say things like the orientation course is such a hurdle, like my student can't seem to get through it. And my answer to that is that's the first indication that this probably isn't a good thing for that student to do. So the orientation course definitely shows them about how FlexCAP works, how to work their way around in that Canvas classroom. But it's also just sort of a precursor to hitting the ground running with these FlexCAP courses. The other thing I would say as a site facilitator who enrolls a student, so each semester-long course is broken into 2 parts. So you can consider them quarter-long parts, but we don't award quarter credit. So they have to complete both part 1 and part 2 of, let's say, fall semester of sophomore English to get that half credit of sophomore English. So if you were to get online and try to enroll them for part 2 before they've done part 1, you'll also get that prerequisite hasn't been met message. So they have to get through 1 before they can be enrolled into part 2. Each of our FlexCAP courses has what we call a course path learning guide. It's about a 3 to 4 page PDF that you can download. I highly recommend that the local support person or even the counselor or administrator, whoever's enrolling them, prints that out and goes through that. It shows every assignment that's due, every assessment that will be due. And that student obviously has his or her academic goals, whether that's graduating on time or graduating early or whatever it is. So you can say you have to finish, a credit and a half of FlexCAP courses before you can graduate in May. So if you divide that by 3, you know that they have to complete each of those in the third of amount of time they have left. So printing out that course path learning guide and kind of just breaking it up visually and showing them that you're going to have to be through module 1 by this date. You should be module 2 by this date. And it just keeps them on track and keeps them pushing forward so that they can meet their own goals. So the local support person then proctors each of the assessments using a PIN number or a password that they have access to through our system. We really insist that the adult type that into the test. You don't give it to a student to do. Don't give it to parents to do at home. It has to be a local support person, an adult at the building, to proctor those tests. So logistically, it's $64 per quarter. So that's $128 per semester, which is the same as we charge for our original credit classes. The student has 11 weeks to finish the quarter. So if you think a quarter is really what we consider like 9 weeks, that gives them a little bit of slushy room in case they don't finish in a traditional calendar quarter. If the student doesn't finish on time, you can enroll them in another 11-week course. And the way that looks is that the student will be withdrawn from their class at the end of the 11-week time period. And then you can re-enroll them and they pick up right where they left off. So all of the work they had done is not lost. They don't have to start over, but you do have to purchase another 11 weeks to have the kid keep going. So that's another reason to go through that course path learning guide and really map out deadlines for the student so that you know that they're going to finish in the 11 weeks or even sooner if their individual goals say that they have to. So again, you start with registering the student for the orientation course, and you upload their IEP or 504 documentation, and always know that we're happy to work with students who have IEPs and 504s, but you can't take the online out of an online course. So there are some parts of an online course that just won't work with some accommodations. So once you upload an IEP or a 504, Robin Nettle, whose picture you saw on the first slide, she receives that and looks through the accommodations that are necessary for that student. And if she sees any problems, like we can't accommodate that, she'll reach out to the school and have a conversation. And that conversation might be, the school is going to have to provide XYZ supports to make the student find success in this course. Or the conversation is, this probably isn't a great placement for this student. So I just always kind of frame it like an online course is not the least restrictive environment for every student. So just keep that in mind. And again, we're happy to work. We have lots of students on IEPs and 504s, but it's not the best placement for every student. So you might be familiar with our original credit courses. There's about a 10-day drop period because they last a semester. So there is a 1-week drop period before the school is charged for a FlexCAP course. So during that time, I always really recommend that the administrator or counselor, whoever's the kind of like registering individual, who that might not be the person in the classroom with the student, but that person really should be running action reports and checking on student grades and engagement every day for that first week, just so that you know that the student is on track and this looks like a good placement, because you'll want to drop the student within that drop period so that you don't get charged if it looks like it's not the right placement for the student. Typically, we recommend one course at a time, especially with students who are recovering credit. If they've already failed a course, it's a good chance that they struggle a bit in school. And so I always just say there's nothing that's going to preclude you from registering them for more than one. But I always suggest, why don't you put them in one and let them get a couple weeks into it. And if this looks like it's going well and you think that they have the capacity for more and they have the time in the day for more, then certainly if you wanted to enroll them in another one. But we're not going to have them in English Part 1 and English Part 2 at the same time. So they need to do those two separately, but maybe you want to add the math course that they need or whatever else. So just some thoughts about how FlexCAP works in general. So the next group of courses that we'll talk about are called individualized pathway courses. These are truly the most unique cases in our schools. And these courses are really designed to fit for students who the classroom is not working. Our regular online courses aren't working FlexCap can't work because they can't be at school. So it's another level of individualization. So IPC courses, again, designed to be as flexible as possible without compromising the rigor and expectations of the course. We often refer to the students who are best for IPC as these students with an X factor, whatever you want to call it. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But they're open entry and open exit again, just like FlexCap. It relies really heavily on direct student to teacher interaction. So there's one student, one teacher, and they have a weekly phone call and kind of say, what does your week ahead look like? Let's set some deadlines for you. So that teacher really works them through and paces them through the course to get them through on time. And again, this can be done at home. It doesn't have to be done at school. So students with the X factor.
Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. The X factor. So we have had a student who was expelled from school here and is now in state care, and they're looking for, ideas of what to do. So could that student, who is not our student any longer, but is a Montana resident, do an IPC? Or do they have to be through the school?
Yeah. So every enrollment that we have has to be a public school student.
Okay.
So that might be a homeschool student who you enroll for a period of the day. So they're on your books.
Yeah.
The other thing about expulsion is, and again, all sorts of different reasons. So, but if it's a student who's motivated to graduate and has the, academic ability to do that, that could be a decent idea. If they're in state care, for instance, Pine, doing anything online it's not possible for them. So so it's tricky in that way.
Yep, absolutely.
So sometimes it depends too on the student's infraction that whether a lot of times students who have some issues with inappropriate sexual content, whatever, they don't want them to be online at all. So, but that said, if you were able to enroll the student into a public school, then that public school can enroll them into our class and they don't ever have to be on campus.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I always like to kind of talk about students with the X factor. And again, I'll give you some use cases after, but it's a student who needs to prioritize school sort of like unevenly. And let's just look at the use cases and see if you see what I mean there. So one example would be a student with a medical issue. So the student's undergoing chemotherapy, totally wiped out during treatment weeks, can hardly get out of bed. But on non-treatment weeks, he's able to get going and get school and even move ahead. But he can't have his body in that school because he can't get sick. So that's a student who again, can't be in the building, but has the ability to work very independently, but just unevenly because of their situation. A student who's an elite athlete somewhere in central Montana, I don't remember the school. We have a young woman who does rodeo. So she is gone for, weeks at a time to Arizona for all this training. But like, rodeo doesn't do time trials, I'm sure, but during time trials, maybe this athlete's on the road is not able to spend any time in academics, but when they're doing just regular workouts, they would be able to work hard on academics and again, maybe even work ahead. So it's just those kind of strange situations that take a student out of school a lot, and this just allows them a chance to continue moving ahead. So again, just like this one, Brandy, a student who isn't allowed to come onto campus. And again, they can be done independently away from campus if they have the self-discipline to continue moving forward in their studies. So, and we'll talk a little bit about what that kind of looks like in IPC also. We've had students with such severe mental health issues, it just prevents them from coming to school. And because IPC courses can be done at any time of the day or night, maybe a student has a really hard time during the day, but they're able to function, in the middle of the night. So that's a possibility also. So those are just some scenarios that we've encountered. So before choosing IPC for a student, the first thing is we always ask that you just get a hold of us and just let's just talk about the student for a few minutes and be sure that this seems like it would be a good fit for the student. And we're not here to say it's not a good fit or turn you away, but we just want to bring up some issues that we have seen happen to just kind of talk about those prior to getting a student engaged in this. So good internet access at home. A dedicated device. The student really needs to be an independent learner, self-starter. That student needs to be able to self-advocate. So they have one teacher and one student. They have a teacher dedicated to them, but the teacher can't read their mind. They have to reach out to the teacher if they're having issues. And then we really say there's got to be a staff member in the building who will check in with a student maybe a couple of times a week, whether that's in a text or a phone call or an email or in person, whatever it is, just so that that school is keeping in contact with that kid and knows what's happening. Because IPC can be so independent and the student can work away from the building, I think that it's probably the tendency is to sort of forget about the student because they're working independently. So that's just something that we try to keep in mind. So same thing, student has to take an orientation short course, and it's a different orientation than FlexCAP, but they do have to do that before they get enrolled. It takes them, again, 2 to 4 hours. For a really driven kid, maybe an hour or two. It takes, after the orientation course, they do their little last assignment, which really just says, hey, I'm done. And then that triggers us to know that. Then it takes us about 48 hours because we have to then work on the permissions of the adult who's going to register them so that they're able to register them for IPC courses. So once the adult has that permission to register the student, they do that, and then the student is allowed into the course, and their first assignment is to kind of fill out this little intake form, just kind of like, what's your situation? Just something to sort of introduce yourself to the teacher so that the teacher has an idea of what the limitations are and what the strengths and weaknesses are, just so that they can start to get to know the student. Then the teacher calls the student and kind of schedules this intake phone call. Sometimes that's with the parent and the student. That's perfectly fine. But just to, again, get to know each other and make a plan. So then after that, the teacher, he or she is available to answer questions via email or office hours throughout the week. But once a week, the student and the teacher have a phone call and, again, just kind of say, what's happening this week with you? And like, what deadline should we set so that they can keep going forward and get the student done in time? And then we have tutor.com and all of our courses available 24/7. So the teachers for the IPC courses are just like all of our teachers in the fact that they teach full-time somewhere in Montana. So they're not available to answer phone calls or questions immediately all day long, but students, again, have access to that tutor.com to tide them over until they can get a hold of a teacher. So logistically for IPC courses, these are $99 per quarter. They're more expensive because it's one teacher, one student. These students have 10 weeks to finish the quarter. And again, when you think a typical quarter is 9 weeks, they have 10. You can purchase 2-week extensions for $50 if they can't finish in time. So you start with registering the student for the orientation course. Same as before, if they don't get started on that, then this is probably not a good option. Then the school is going to upload the IEP and 504 documentation. Once again, if they have accommodations, we can usually match those, but if we can't, we'll call the school and have a conversation. And again, I would really start with one course, and you know your students better than we do. I mean, some students you can say, no, they're going to kill this. So 2 courses is fine, 3 courses, whatever it is. But I just always say start with one and just give it a few weeks. And if it's a good fit, great. Go ahead and add some more.